Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast, the silly and serious shenanigans of two queer relationship coaches. I am your host, Elizabeth Cunningham.
And I'm your host, Lee Greeps.
On this podcast, we talk about how to live your best queer life with fulfilling, healthy relationships and anything else that makes your little queer heart happy. Because living your life outside of the heteronormative scripts is totally possible for you.
Each episode, we explore all things queer love from our professional perspective as relationship coaches, our own personal experiences, and as partners.
If you love our show, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships. You can also check out our website, www.queerloverelationships.com.
Thanks for following us and enjoy this episode.
I love it. I'm like, there are some queer folks that are like, I don't want to be the first. And I'm like, I'll be the first.
I volunteer.
Send them my way. That's great. I love it.
All right. Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast. We said we were going to record in Descript and then we didn't do that.
No.
All right. Next one.
It's okay.
All good. Okay. It's a short. We're doing a quickie today.
Quickie. Yeah. It is actually about sex. So
and it's about sex. So here we go. We're just going to riff. What is your... Ridiculous. Oh, man. How do we ever get anything done with your shenanigans?
I know. I derail everything.
Obviously.
I'm just seeing the cat making the biscuits right now from that video we just
watched. So good. What? Tell me something that you love about queer sex.
Everything. Well, like it went everything, and then the next thing was there's not a penis involved.
True lesbian.
Which, for folks who don't want a penis involved, it is great when there is not one involved.
It's true. If you do not want that and it is not present, it's great.
I love that for
really,
me.
really great.
Yeah, man.
But if you do want that and it's not present, then probably less great.
Yeah,
for you.
I would imagine that brings some sadness, but I get brought joy instead. I would be sad if it was involved. I'd be like, this is awkward because I am now leaving.
Oh my God. I think the I'm just reminded of a time when I was in my, oh my God, words, erotic coaches training.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Got it out. And we were talking about queer sex, because like a lot of people in this training are straight. But plenty of people in the training were queer.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that got brought up was, what is sex? And like, if there is no penetration, then is it still sex? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If there's no penetration. And like, obviously in queer sex, there can still be penetration. Yeah, and also there's queer people who have penises.
Right. Yeah, the gay boys would be very sad if there wasn't a penis involved.
Right. Plenty. But there's a lot of queer sex that like doesn't involve penetration and like that, or involves penetration, but there isn't a penis. There's other types of penetration.
Use your imagination.
Oh my God, get crazy. But like just expanding the horizons of like what sex means to you and what sex means to like your partner as well. And like kind of, because I think since it's something that we don't talk about, we do assume that like our definition of sex is similar to other people's definitions of sex. And I will tell you, as someone who has been helping people in this arena for years, everyone's definitions of sex are pretty wildly different,
Right.
especially when you get into more like queer sex.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's that if I'm to elaborate on the joy of not having a penis there, it's because, but because of that, it's literally like the component that, we get raised in with like sex, penis in vagina.
Mm-hmm.
That's sex, right? Like it's like, well, there's no penis. So that a whole little script, woo, toss it to the wind. It is not here. And so in that, it's like you do have like you get creative because you don't have that, script. And that's not to say like, sex that is penis vagina isn't creative or can't be creative. Like, yes, of course it can, but it's like literally like at step one, we are already having to go off script, right?
Right.
Like it's just like, okay, well, what you want to do, right? Like, but like that's the element of it that like this like what I really love is that because we don't have one of the key roles according to society's scripts, we can do our own thing. Like it's just like, yeah, get creative. What actually feels good? What's the flow? Like what's the vibe today, right? Because it's and in that like the understanding of sex, meaning of sex, in that queer dynamic is then it's like whatever you want it to be in that situation. And so it is, it's just it's very playful and fun and creative, and you're just like, what's happening? Because there's no
Yeah.
penis. It's great.
Yeah. And like super broad. And also, I think, especially when you're able to talk about sex with each other, which just because you're queer doesn't mean that you're equipped to talk about sex.
Right.
And when I say equipped, I mean like you've been taught how to have these conversations, or you're comfortable
Yeah, feel
having these
comfortable.
conversations, or you even understand what you want, especially since this isn't a topic that gets talked about, like sex education especially in the United States, but certainly in other countries as well, is like minimal at best. And you don't talk about like sex. You talk about like babies. You talk about like a sperm can, like impregnate an egg, or what is it called? What is it?
Infiltrate.
Infiltrate. What's the word? See, this is how great our sex education is. I'm like that.
Insemination.
There you go. Exactly. Like you more just talk about that, or like STIs or things like that. Like when we get a sex education, like we're not talking about pleasure. Like we're not talking about pleasure. And like
God.
sex is pleasure. Like for the most part. Like yes, of course people have sex to have babies.
It is one of its purposes.
It is one of its purposes, especially if you do have a penis and a vagina. And also like mostly people have sex for pleasure, for fun.
But we don't talk about
But we don't talk about that. And so then we don't know how to talk about that.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the amazing opportunities in queer relationships, since you don't have that script, is you're kind of, for lack of a better way of saying this, like forced into talking about it.
Fun.
Yeah. Oh no.
But it is like it warrants that like immediate conversation.
Right.
Like or like, okay. I mean, because like I can say that for like having sex with women who have not had sex with anything but a penis before. Like I am the uncharted territory in terms of a body, right? Like, and they're just like, and like I can tell like they're trying to sort it out and figure, and like just like it is adorable. I love it. Like I'm like, there are some queer folk that are like, I don't want to be the first, and I'm like, I'll be the first.
I
volunteer. Send them my way. That's great. I love it. But but it warrants that thing of like, okay, like what do you find pleasurable? Like what feels good? Like what kind of touch? What kind of pressure? What kind of like what do you like? And 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 so that, you know, just brings in that conversation right away. And then and I've also seen that too, where it's kind of like you can get like the deer in the headlights look of like, what I find pleasurable. Like, you know, like it's like for women specifically too, right? Because it's
Mhm.
just like, oh, what? Like, you know, if you're used to just like kind of the traditional heteronormative sex and things, like, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff around that, but it's just like, oh, what I find pleasurable. And it's like, yeah, we can go slow. We can do this. We can da da da. Like, hours and hours of fun and joy are available. Step right up. But it's, you know, but it is yeah, it just creates a different experience around sex than, you know, what most of us get raised with around sex.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of want to talk about we didn't plan this episode at all. We were just like, let's just do a quickie about sex because it's hilarious. And fun and awesome. And everyone should be able to talk about what they like and what they don't like and
Mhm.
to be able to explore that. And I think one of the ways that I really love teaching people about exploring what you like and what you don't like is with not having sex. And what I mean by that is like exploring your eroticism,
Mhm.
right? Like instead of being like, oh, how do we have sex? It's more about like what brings me pleasure. And so there's different types of erotic games that you can play or like different ways that you can like experience eroticism and investigate or like get curious about your own eroticism and what brings you pleasure and what brings your partner pleasure. Uh, we got these new lights and the lights are going out right now because apparently they weren't really charged. Um,
Still looks good.
so yeah, we're good. We're good. So one of those games is from the training that I did with the erotic blueprints, which is the AB game, which is super fun. And basically all you do is you know, like when you go to the eye doctor and
Yeah.
they put the eye thing up to your face and they say, which is better, A and then or B
Or like one or
or
two.
one or two or you know whatever. And so the AV game in eroticism works similarly where you can either, and this is, you know, up to you and your partner, like you can either be blindfolded or not or close your eyes or not. And you can have all of your clothes on or not or part of, you know, part like really just like this can be as sexy or as innocent as you
Mhm.
want it to be.
Yeah.
But basically it's just you touch your partner in one way, and that's touch A, and then you touch your partner in another way, and that's touch B. And then it's like, okay, which one did you like more,
Mhm.
A or B? And my recommendation in playing this game is that you do touches over your whole body.
Mhm.
Like this is not just about sexual touch. Like
Yeah.
it's just about finding sensations. It's like if you think about it in like a what touch where brings my partner the most pleasure, then it can be really fun. Like
Yeah.
exploratory, like ooh, like I'm gonna like lightly caress your arms very, very softly
Mhm.
for touch A.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to like take my nails and like claw down your thighs for touch B, you know, and then
I'm like, although it's like, I'd be like, you'll get to learn and be like, oh, I do not like that. Like,
right, and you're like learn, and you can also have like a consent conversation. I recommend having a consent conversation.
you know, you
What do
already
you all
don't
what do you know that
like,
you already don't like? Like so if
like,
you're
I hate scratching, I
right,
hate biting, or whatever.
I hate scratching, I hate biting, or some people really don't like that like super light
Yeah,
touch.
like they're like,
Like some
oh,
people are like, oh, that like makes me want to, that's so cringy to
yeah,
me,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
if you already know that about yourself, then like setting up this game, you can already say that. You can be like, I hate that super tickly light touch. Like I
Mhm.
hate it. Don't do it to me. Also, P.S. I love that. Like I am so about that. I'm like, oh, so great.
Yeah,
So is this one.
I like that just
All the touches. But yeah, like if you already know things that you really don't like, then you can experience, you can say that beforehand. So like your partner is not going to do the thing that you already know that you don't like, right?
right.
But yeah, so that would be like touch A and touch B, and then your partner would say, like, I liked touch A better. And then you can even say, like, why? Why did you like touch A better? What about it was more pleasurable to you? Did you think that touch B was pleasurable at all?
Mhm.
Or was touch A just, they're both pleasurable, touch A was just better because of this or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you can just like go and like, and you can use your hands, you can use other items too. And it again, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to like a sex store. I mean, if you want to, you can totally do that.
Yeah.
But you don't have
You
to.
could use a fuzzy sock.
Yeah, you use like if you got like a fuzzy sock and like, it's just like caress your partner's cheek with like the fuzzy part of the sock, like,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Or it's like, if you have like a spatula and like you spank your partner with a spatula instead of like a riding crop because you don't have that, right? Like just getting creative
Yeah,
about it
I mean, it's
too.
like you can also change like temperatures of like maybe if you have like a heating pad and you like put your hands on the heating pad first, and then you have like
Ooh,
warm touch, and then like maybe like let your hands kind of cool down or whatever, and then it's like you
cold
do that same touch, but the difference is
temperature.
right, like maybe you like have a cold glass of water nearby, so you can just like put your hand on that, and then it's like now your hands are cold. And it's
Mhm.
like do that same touch, and it's like what brings more pleasure, right? And so
Right.
then like the temperatures of things too, because then you can bring that into play in different experiences too. So it's like the creativity. Look at that.
I know. You can also play this game at different times of day
Mm-hmm.
and be like, oh, is it more fun to be erotic in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
in the afternoon, in the evening, right before bed? Like maybe you
A
recognize
quickie during a work break.
our work break. There you
The
go.
splendors of remote work.
Yeah. Or just like a quick like A/B touch. Again, like if your partner is open to like doing these, like we would do this, where it's
Like we
just
should
like
play
we should totally do
lime,
that.
lime.
Yeah,
Oh
we
my
should
god.
totally do that. That's literally what I'm thinking. I'm like, actually, why don't we do this more? Um,
Great. Well, we got what we wanted.
Bye. But just like, those things as well. And like the other thing about like talking about sex too is also talking about your past with sex and like what worked and what didn't work for you, or maybe even what traumas you have,
Mhm.
so that your partner can be more informed about like different things that might trigger you in bad ways, and like really being upfront with those things as well, even though that's a really hard conversation to have, especially depending on if you've ever talked about it before, or who you've talked about it with before, or how recent it's been, etc. That can be a really hard conversation. But also if you have a sexual partner where that's relevant
Mhm.
with them, then that would also be a really good conversation to have, because that's only going to make everyone safer in that scenario,
Mhm.
because then that the other person knows things that trigger you, and so that, and you can trust them to avoid that. If you can't trust your sex partner to avoid your triggers, I would highly question why you should keep having sex with that person.
Yeah.
So like I'm also making the assumption that you can share this with this person that you're having sex with, and that they will honor that,
Mhm.
right? And that's kind of the other thing about sharing boundaries, is that like that's very telling about a person. Like if someone will keep your boundaries or someone will break your boundaries, then it's like that's good information for you, because then you can make a informed decision about whether or not you want to keep having sex with this person.
Mhm.
You know, I've had partners in the past where like they've broken my boundaries, and that has like severely hindered our sex life, because I'm like, I'm not willing to have sex with you until we rebuild this
Mhm.
trust. And in some cases, that's led to us not being in a relationship anymore, because it's like that trust was never able to be rebuilt for one reason or another, right? So like that's like stating your boundaries is like a really good information too. And again, like, and it can just be in like playing erotic games. Like it doesn't have to be in like having sex. And I would also say too, like, especially if you have trauma around sex, like playing erotic games where you're explicitly not going to have sex. It's like, oh, like that's been something that's been really healing for me, is like, I want to play this erotic, pleasurable game with you, but I want to keep sex off the table. Like, we're not going to have sex. We're actually just going to like have fun and be playful and like explore, but like no sex.
Mhm.
And that has made these games feel a lot safer for me
Yeah.
to play with partners, because it's like I know that sex is not going to happen.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. No. And like
Yeah.
I was even thinking too when like you were talking about like times of days and stuff, but it's like if you have a if you're with female partners, like it's like you can also do this like in different times of like their cycle, right? Because like obviously it depends on like some people like having sex on their period and some people don't, or right, like what part of their cycle they are. It's like the touch is different, right? Like maybe it's like you want firm touch versus like lighter touch or like more
Yeah.
tender touch and
Yeah.
um
Oh yeah, there's definitely certain times of my, I know that I said that I really like the soft touch or whatever,
yeah.
but there's definitely certain times of my cycle where I'm like, I hate it.
But that's like, but it's like you can like, you can play around with those kinds of things. And it's, and then it also helps you to understand your body more too. So it's not even, just your partner and also like, in this what you're just talking about, like where it's like, yeah, we're just playing this like erotic game, and we're just playing, we're not having like we're not gonna go okay into the act of sex, whatever that is for you. Like it's just like, no, this is just because and then the other part is just like how this, enhances, when you do go into the act of sex.
Act of
The
sex.
act, because it's like an action, like, like,
Yeah.
it's like, and so, like eroticism and like all of like eroticism is just like it brings like the life, the adventure, like the play and things, because you're just playing, right? And so you're not there's nothing, it's not like the expectations, like you're just like, oh, there's curiosity, right? Like it's like there's a novelty, like we can play things, we can learn things. And that's just going to then feed into when you do have sex, because it's like, oh, I have this information, but it's also like you have that aspect of play and like, you get to learn each other's bodies more and energies and, what you like, don't like. And so it just enhances it. And also then it just creates more fun and play in your relationship overall, like whether sex is being had or not. Like it's just like, oh, yeah, like, oh, let me just touch this, or like, oh, let me just rub my hand over her neck, or whatever. Like, because we do that during the day where we're just like, we just kind of like, oh, oh, oh. And but it just like kind of brings in a little bit of that vibrancy, right? And I think that's what kind of people will just only put with sex, right? Like it's like it can only happen in this container versus like seeing it as like, eroticism is different than sex. And so it's like you can bring eroticism where sex is not expected, sex is not going to be had. And so then you have a lot more freedom to be in that kind of playful, pleasurable state in the rest of the time of your relationship that isn't, the amount of time that you spend having sex. And so it just creates, again, it just enlivens the experience like in the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing inside of eroticism is that like, we're talking about touch, we're talking about time of day, But other types of touch that aren't like physical touch
Yeah.
are
Many ways to touch a person.
yeah, like can be energetic touch. So you know when like you know when you're a little kid and you play the game like, oh, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, but it's like you can feel like their finger like by your face. Like that is a very like childish, playful, energy, immature, like energetic touch.
Right.
But like in eroticism as an adult, it can be like, hovering your hand over like a part of their body and just like feeling that heat or feeling that tingling sensation or
I'm so
feeling
sensitive. I literally like feel
yeah.
with like my whole like neck and right here. It's just like oh my
I also know that about Leahs, like they have a very like energetically sensitive neck. You cute cutie.
I was like, it's a demonstration, but oh my God.
Oh,
You'll
man.
understand how energetically sensitive or not you
or
are.
not or not so and then again and you'll find that out, right, where it's just like if you hover your hand over your partner's body part and they're like, oh, like whatever, like okay, they're not energetically sensitive, that's fine, like there's nothing good or bad about that,
dude.
but if you find, I have had especially men that I have like either played with or slept with or something like that, because again, I feel like this happens a lot more in queer spaces because you do get a lot more creative, and there's also I don't know how else to say it, but there's also not a cis male ego there. And so you can be a lot more experimental because there isn't this pressure that they have of like being good or bad or performing or not performing, which does make their ego a lot more sensitive, and it makes it harder to explore things.
Yeah.
Because you do have to kind of like
tend to the ego.
Tend to that, which again, like I'm not faulting if you're cis male, and I'm not faulting you for that. Like it's definitely like a culturally like inherited thing that you have to work through. Like you are the only one who can heal that for you. But it does make talking about sex and exploring inside of sex much harder. And so in queer spaces, like there's a lot more experimentation that's possible. Number one, because of what we said earlier, where it's just like you don't have that heteronormative script. And so you're already in a place where you have to be creative, like necessity breeds innovation, right?
Right.
But also you're generally not to say that queer people's ego don't get involved in sex,
right?
That's not what I'm saying. That isn't what I'm saying. Like everyone has an ego and our egos get involved in sex for sure.
Yeah,
we all have our own stories. We all have our own stories around it. We all have our etc. But it just happens to be a lot more heightened, seems to be a lot more heightened with cis male people. And so it just adds an extra layer of difficulty in having these conversations and explorations, right? So generally in queer spaces, being able to like explore like energetic touch is a lot easier. And like there's other types of touch that aren't physical as well, like sound, like music, your voice,
breathing.
Breathing. I'm like, Lee is very sensitive to like
I'm
voice.
sensitive to all.
Oh, you're so like, oh, this one is so fun to play. Am I allowed to say that? I'm so sorry, but like you're so fun because you're so sensitive.
That was true. I'm like, oh my God.
It's like
on the other episode of like I'm just like I am just so sensitive, and it's not just emotionally, like
you're just all the sensitive,
especially with sounds and energy, like sounds and energy for me.
Also, but not one that you're not sensitive to, not as sensitive to.
Yeah,
is smell.
Yeah, because I that's literally like my sense of smell is not great. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, but when I can smell something that's good, like oh my God, like that's why I love when it's like if we're like playing or whatever, it's like if we have like incense. Because I like the energy, like, and I also like the energy that smoke brings in. Like I can feel it, so it's like oh, and then there's like a scent going, and like oh my God, that like creates but it's like it's moving with the energy, right? So
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah,
oh
it's more
my.
energetic for you.
Yeah, like
Where
it's
mine is more like sensual.
yeah.
Like where, yeah, and it's not that I'm not energetic and it's not that Lee isn't sensual.
Yeah.
It's just that their heightened pleasure comes from the more energetic side of things,
Mhm.
and my heightened pleasure comes from more of the sensual
Yeah.
side of things. So like for me, it's like the smell for the sake of the smell, not necessarily the smell for the sake of like the energy of like
Yeah.
the smoke or,
Yeah.
something like that, right? So it's like we like incense for different reasons, but we
Yeah.
both like it.
It works.
It works. It works. And so, but yeah, like smell can be one of them. Taste can be another one. Like food can be really erotic,
Mhm.
playing with food. And also like sensation play, like using, like I said earlier about like the spatula or whatever, but like even if you get like different silverware, like a fork,
Mhm.
like with the spiky on
A
it.
little poke, poke.
Yeah, or like a spoon with like the smooth, or a knife if you want to like, and be very careful and
Butter biscuit.
have a lot of consent conversations if you're doing knife play.
Yeah.
Like set the container very specifically and safely if you are doing knife play. But like being able to get creative like that,
Yeah.
right?
Literally just go in your household and be like, what?
Yeah,
I just
what would
go
this
through
feel
this
like?
drawer. Like you could go in the freaking bathroom, get a brush, get a hairbrush,
Right, a
like
loofah.
yeah, like it's like again, if we talked about a sock earlier, like
Right.
it's like you don't have to do anything crazy. Like
Right.
you don't have to go to a sex shop or
Right. You don't like,
or any shop at the point. Just go in your house and just be like, oh, let me open this drawer.
yeah.
What could I use with this?
Or like even different like rooms, like,
Yeah.
like what does it feel like to explore eroticism when we're in the living room, like
Or
in
the kitchen.
or kitchen where like people could like look in or I don't know, or whatever, like, like what? And just like, or like experimenting with different types of words and how you like to address one another. That's one of the things that I really like to do with partners is like, what do you like to be called? Like, what are the pet names? What are the pet names that turn you on? Or like, what are the ways that you like to be addressed that really turn you on? And like, I love exploring like that with partners too. So there's just like, there's so much that you can explore and like see what brings you pleasure and see what doesn't bring you pleasure, see what surprises you with what you like and see what surprises you with what you don't like. Sometimes it's like you have an idea of what you like and then you do it and you're just like, oh, huh. Okay, well, I don't know. And sometimes you try something and you're like, I don't know if it, well, we're it's an experiment. We'll try it, whatever. And then you're like, holy shit, that was amazing. What just happened?
No, it is,
Yeah.
it's just a playful way to like experiment and see with like no strings attached to it too, right? Because it's like if you're in that mindset of we're just trying to see, what is pleasurable, what's not, or what's less, what's more, then you're not in that sense, like, especially
Takes
if you're
the
like,
pressure
yeah, it
off.
takes the pressure off. Because like if you're, engaged in sex and you're just like, oh, they didn't like that, like, and then you start to feel like kind of down or
Right.
or
Am I a
whatever.
good partner? Like, am I bringing them enough pleasure?
Yeah, like all that.
Should I be making them have an orgasm right now? Should I be waiting? I don't know.
Yeah, like it's just like all of that is in place. So it's like in this separate container of like a game and like being able to see it's just like, oh, okay, great. Like I really wanted to try this, this form of touch or use this item or whatever. And like the response wasn't that great. So then I know not to do that. And then it's like I now have a lot more data and information.
Yeah, totally.
To then like when we are having sex, it's just like, oh, well, I know how to bring her pleasure because it's like I have all this to go off of now, right?
And you can start to incorporate it. Yeah, super fun. Okay, that was our quickie.
Quickie.
That was fun.
In and out.
Or not, depending on what you're into, It doesn't have to involve penetration, Lee.
That's why I thought it was funny.
Yeah. Okay, we love you.
Okay,
Go
love
have
you.
fun.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Queer Love Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Drop us a line on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships, or email us at queerloverelationships@gmail.com.
If you are interested in working with us, follow the Linktree link in the show notes. See if our offers resonate with you, and if they do, sign up with us or book a discovery session.
We are so grateful that you're here, listening, learning, and growing with us.
Until next time, keep loving.